The wedding video went viral on a Tuesday. Not the official one that never made it online. This was different, grainier, shot on someone's phone from the back of the reception hall at the Grandview Estate, one of Charleston's most exclusive venues, and in it, a bride in an ill-fitting bridesmaid dress stood screaming at the microphone while behind her, a slideshow glitched between romantic couple photos and footage that made 300 guests gasp in unison, and somewhere in the crowd, Jessica Chen sat perfectly still, her champagne untouched, watching 2 years of meticulous planning detonate like a bomb she'd spent 6 months building, but that came later. 6 months earlier, Jessica had been happy. Genuinely, stupidly, completely happy in the way that only 28-year-old women who think they figured out life can be. She had her dream job as the lead event coordinator at Memorable Moments, Charleston's premier wedding planning company. She had her best friend since college, Morgan Whitmore, who knew every secret, every fear, every stupid crush Jessica had ever had. And she had Daniel Park, her fiancé of 1 year, a software engineer who made her laugh and didn't mind that she worked 60-hour weeks during wedding season. Life was good. Life was perfect. Life was a lie so complete that when it shattered, Jessica would spend weeks trying to figure out when the cracks had actually started. When Morgan's hugs had become performances. When Daniel's kisses had tasted like guilt. When her entire existence had become a stage play where everyone knew their lines except her dot. It was a Thursday when everything changed. Not a special Thursday, just another suffocating June day in Charleston, where the humidity wrapped around you like wet cotton and the smell of jasmine was so thick it felt obscene. Jessica had spent the morning finalizing details for the Morrison wedding that weekend. A massive affair with 400 guests and a budget that made her annual salary look like pocket change. She'd grabbed lunch at her desk, a wilted Caesar salad from the place, downstairs, and was reviewing flower arrangements when her phone buzzed out. Daniel, can you come home early? We need to talk. 5 words. That's all it took for Jessica's stomach to drop like an elevator with cut cables. Nobody ever needed to talk about good things. Nobody ever said, we need to talk, before announcing a promotion or a surprise vacation or literally anything that didn't involve devastation. She texted back that she'd be home by 6, then spent the next 4 hours spiraling through every possible disaster. He was sick. Someone died. He wanted to move. He'd lost his job. He'd found someone else. She didn't actually believe that last one. Daniel wasn't the cheating type. He was steady, reliable, almost boring in his consistency. He brought her coffee every Saturday morning. He remembered her mother's birthday. He'd spent 3 months planning an elaborate proposal at the botanical gardens because he knew she loved gardenias. Men like that didn't cheat. Jessica left work at 5:30. Her hands shaking slightly as she drove through downtown Charleston's narrow streets, past rainbow row houses that looked like pastel wedding cakes, past tourists snapping photos of horse-drawn carriages, past all the genteel southern charm that usually made her feel lucky to live here. Today it felt suffocating, like the whole city was in on a joke she hadn't heard yet. Their apartment was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of place that looked incredible in photos and was impossible to heat in winter. Daniel was sitting on their gray sectional when she walked in, his laptop closed beside him, his hands clasped like he was praying or about to deliver a eulogy. His eyes were red. I fucked up, he said before she could even set down her bag. I fucked up so bad, Jess, and I don't know how to fix it. Jessica felt her whole body go cold despite the heat. She sat down slowly on the chair across from him, not the couch beside him, creating distance she didn't know she needed yet. What did you do? Daniel ran his hands through his hair, that nervous gesture she'd always found endearing and now wanted to slap away. I've been seeing someone. For 6 months. I tried to end it so many times, but I couldn't. And now he's stopped, looking like he might vomit. 6 months. Half a year. While Jessica had been planning their wedding, sampling cakes, debating invitation fonts, Daniel had been fucking someone else. The math made her dizzy. 6 months ago was December, Christmas. She'd bought him a vintage watch he'd been eyeing. He'd given her a necklace with both their initials. They'd had sex under their Christmas tree because they were young and stupid and happy. Who? Jessica's voice came out flat, mechanical. She already knew. Somewhere deep in her lizard brain, she already fucking knew, but she needed to hear him say it. Morgan. The name landed like a physical blow. Jessica actually felt her chest constrict, her lungs forgetting how to work. Not Morgan. Anyone but Morgan. Morgan, who'd been her roommate junior year. Morgan, who'd held her hair back when she had food poisoning. Morgan, who'd been the first person she told about Daniel. Who'd squealed and hugged her and said, "Finally, someone good enough for you." Morgan, who'd asked Jessica to be her maid of honor 3 months ago. You're lying. But she knew he wasn't. Suddenly, everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Morgan's new habit of texting during their lunches together. The way she'd been weird about Jessica and Daniel joining her and Brad for double dates. How she'd insisted Jessica didn't need to help much with wedding planning because you're already so busy with work. It hadn't been consideration. It had been guilt. It started at Brad's company Christmas party, Daniel said. And Jessica wanted to scream at him to stop talking. But she also needed to know everything, needed to catalog every moment of betrayal. We were both drunk, and it just happened, and then we said it wouldn't happen again, but then it did, and does Brad know? Brad Mitchell, Morgan's fiancé, a corporate lawyer with perfect teeth and a trust fund. The kind of guy who wore expensive watches and talked about market volatility at parties. Daniel shook his head. Morgan said she'd tell him. She promised she was going to end things with him, but then she never did. And I realized she wasn't going to, and I couldn't do this anymore. I can't marry you while this is happening. You deserve better. The laugh that came out of Jessica was ugly, bitter, nothing like her normal laugh. Oh, how noble. You can't marry me while you're fucking my best friend, so you're what, calling off our wedding? When's the wedding, Daniel? When is our fucking wedding? October 19th. His voice was barely a whisper. And Morgan's wedding? June 15th. Jessica did the math. 2 weeks. Morgan was getting married in 2 weeks, and she'd been screwing Jessica's fiancé for 6 months. And she was still expecting Jessica to stand up there in a lavender dress and smile and hold her bouquet and pretend everything was fine. The audacity was almost impressive. Get out. Jessica stood up, her whole body shaking now, adrenaline and rage and heartbreak mixing into something volatile. Get the fuck out of my apartment. Jess, it's my apartment. My name on the lease. Get out or I'm calling the police. Daniel left. He packed a bag and 10 minutes clothes, laptop, toothbrush, all the essential pieces of a life he was abandoning, and walked out the door without looking back. Jessica watched from the window as he loaded his car, as he sat in the driver's seat for a long moment like he might change his mind as he finally drove away. Then she went to the bathroom and threw up her Caesar salad. And then she sat on the cold tile floor and cried for 2 hours, when she could breathe again. When her eyes were so swollen she could barely see, she pulled out her phone. 17 missed calls from Morgan. 23 text messages, each one more frantic than the last. Daniel told me he confessed. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. It's not what you think. I love him. Jess, I didn't mean for this to happen. Please talk to me. You're my best friend. That last one almost made Jessica laugh again. She didn't respond. Instead, she scrolled through her photos, looking at 2 years of friendship that had apparently been a performance. Morgan's engagement party, where Jessica had given a toast. Morgan's bridal shower that Jessica had planned. Halloween, where they dressed as Thelma and Louise. New Year's, where they'd made drunk promises about being friends forever. Every photo felt contaminated now, poisoned by the knowledge that Morgan had been lying to her face while sleeping with her fiancé. Jessica's phone rang. Morgan calling for the 18th time. This time, Jessica answered. "Oh, thank God," Morgan breathed. "Jess, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway." Jessica's voice was calm now, eerily calm, the kind of calm that comes after the storm has ripped through and left nothing but rubble. "For 6 months, you did it anyway. It just happened. We didn't plan it. We tried to stop, but we fell in love. And I know that's not fair to you, but you can't control who you love. And are you calling off your wedding?" Silence. Long, damning silence. "Brad doesn't know," Morgan finally said. "And I can't tell him right now, not 2 weeks before the wedding. His parents have spent a fortune and all our friends are flying in, and so you're going to marry him while you're in love with my fiancé? It's complicated." "No, it's really not." Jessica felt something shift inside her, something cold and hard crystallizing where her heart used to be. "You want both. You want Brad's money and status and the perfect wedding, and you want Daniel as your little secret on the side. And you thought I'd just, be okay with it? Stand up there and smile while you marry someone you're cheating on with the man I was supposed to marry? I hoped you'd understand, eventually. You're my best friend, Jess. That doesn't change." The laugh that came out of Jessica this time was different, darker. It scared her a little. "You're right. I am your best friend. I'll be at your wedding, Morgan. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Really?" Morgan sounded so hopeful, so relieved, so fucking stupid. "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. I know this is hard, but we can get through this. We're sisters, right? Sisters before misters?" Jessica hung up without responding. Sisters before misters. A phrase they'd said 1,000 times, usually while drunk, always while laughing. Another lie in a tower of lies, so high it blotted out the sun. She sat there in her apartment, in the silence, and felt the old Jessica, the happy, trusting, naive Jessica die. Something new was being born in her place. Something that understood that kindness was weakness. That trust was a weapon people used against you. That the only way to survive was to strike first and strike hardest. Jessica opened her laptop and pulled up the file for Morgan's wedding. She'd been working on it for 2 years, ever since Morgan got engaged. Every detail was perfect because that's what Jessica did. She made perfect weddings. She knew every vendor, every timeline, every password, every access code. She had keys to the venue. She had Morgan's dress size. She had copies of the guest list, the seating chart, the music playlist. She had everything, and Morgan had just given her a reason to use it all. Over the next week, Jessica went to work like normal. She smiled at clients, finalized the Morrison wedding, approved flower arrangements, and didn't mention to anyone that her engagement was over. Her coworkers asked about her ring. She'd stopped wearing it, and she said it was being resized. Her boss asked if she needed time off, sensing something wrong, and Jessica said she was fine. Everything was fine. At night, she planned. She made lists. She researched. She opened the bottle of very expensive bourbon Daniel had been saving for their wedding and drank it while mapping out every single way she could destroy Morgan Whitmore's perfect day. Some ideas were too illegal. Some were too obvious. Some wouldn't hurt enough. Jessica was looking for the perfect balance of devastation and deniability. Revenge that would carve Morgan's life into pieces while leaving. Jessica's hands technically clean. The dress was obvious. Morgan's custom Vera Wang gown hung in the bridal suite at Grandview Estate, where Jessica had keys and unlimited access. Size 4, altered to fit Morgan's petite frame perfectly, $20,000 of silk and lace, and Morgan's obsessive need to look like a princess. Jessica could make that disappear. The father angle was trickier. Morgan's dad was a sore subject. He'd left when Morgan was 12, remarried, started a new family, and Morgan had cut him off completely. She'd explicitly said he wasn't invited to the wedding, but Jessica had met him once years ago before the estrangement got bad. She still had his number from when Morgan had asked her to collect some childhood photos he'd had. One phone call, one lie about Morgan wanting to reconcile, and he'd show up, guaranteed. The financial records were the nuclear option. Jessica had paid for the rehearsal dinner Morgan had asked her to, said Brad's parents were already covering so much, and Jessica had been too good a friend to say no. $8,000 at Peninsula Grill for 60 people. Morgan's mother, who lived on a teacher's pension and already resented how much Brad's wealthy family was involved in the wedding, would lose her mind if she knew Morgan had let Jessica pay for something that expensive while trash-talking her mother's cooking in. Private texts Jessica had screenshots of. Bachelor party footage was Daniel's problem. Jessica had access to his laptop. He'd never changed his password from their anniversary date, and she'd found the videos. Nothing illegal, but definitely nothing a bride would want played at her wedding reception. Some creative editing, a deepfake app she found online, and she could make it look even worse than it was. Plausibly deniable because people would assume it was real footage that got leaked. The music was simple. Jessica had the Spotify password for the reception playlist because Morgan had asked her to help curate it months ago. One password changed during the ceremony, and the whole reception would be silent or playing whatever Jessica wanted, but Jessica wanted more. She wanted Morgan to suffer. She wanted the humiliation to be so complete, so public, so devastating that Morgan would feel it for the rest of her life. She wanted Morgan to know what it felt like to have everything you'd built ripped away by someone you trusted. The Morrison wedding went off perfectly that weekend. Jessica smiled through the whole thing, took photos with the happy couple, and accepted their tearful thanks. Her boss gave her a bonus. One of the bridesmaids asked for her card for when she got engaged. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. On Monday, Jessica called in sick to work. She'd never called in sick before, not in 3 years at memorable moments, so nobody questioned her. Instead of staying home, she drove to Grandview Estate. The venue coordinator knew her Jessica had run a dozen weddings there and didn't think twice about letting her into the bridal suite early. Morgan's dress hung in the closet like a ghost. Jessica touched the silk, felt the weight of it, and thought about Morgan zipping herself into this dress, looking in the mirror, feeling beautiful and triumphant and like she'd won. She thought about Daniel waiting at the altar, because of course Morgan had convinced him to come to the wedding as a guest. Probably feeding him some bullshit about closure watching. Morgan walked down the aisle toward another man, well knowing she'd be in his bed that night. Jessica took the dress down carefully, folded it into a garment bag she'd brought, and replaced it with one of the bridesmaid dresses. Same designer, similar style, but size 8 instead of size 4. She'd ordered it weeks ago, paid cash, picked it up from a boutique 2 towns over where nobody knew her. The alterations were close enough that Morgan wouldn't notice on the hanger. But when she tried to zip it up on her wedding day, she'd know something was wrong. Next, Jessica went to the venue's view room. The videographer had dropped off equipment early. They had another wedding that morning and would be cutting it close to get to Morgan's ceremony by 3. Jessica found the laptop controlling the reception slideshow, the one that would play during dinner, and swapped out the video files. The original montage of Brad and Morgan's relationship, disappeared onto a flash drive that Jessica would later throw into Charleston Harbor. In its place went something special she'd spent hours creating: wedding photos interspersed with The Bachelor, party footage, edited to look like a glitchy technical failure. Impossible to prove was deliberate, but devastating nonetheless. The Spotify password change was easy. Jessica did it from her phone while sitting in her car in the Grandview Estate parking lot. New password, logged out of all devices, confirmation email deleted. Morgan's carefully curated playlist of romantic first dance songs and crowd-pleasing reception music was gone, replaced with whatever chaos Jessica decided to inflict in the moment. Then came the hard part. Jessica drove to a part of Charleston she never visited, a neighborhood where the houses were smaller and the paint was peeling, where Morgan's father lived with his new wife and 2 teenage kids. She knocked on the door at 2 in the afternoon. Knowing he'd probably be off work, he was a contractor. Usually done by noon. Ray Whitmore answered the door in a stained t-shirt and jeans, older than Jessica remembered, grayer, with the kind of worn-down look of a man who'd made bad choices and was still paying for them. He didn't recognize her at first. Mr. Whitmore. I'm Jessica Chun. I'm friends with Morgan. His face did something complicated. Morgan asked you to come here? Actually, she wanted me to invite you to something. Her wedding. It's this Saturday at Grandview Estate, 3 o'clock. Jessica pulled out an invitation she'd printed herself, Morgan's name and Brad's in elegant script. She didn't want to call herself because things have been weird, but she thought maybe if you just showed up, you two could talk. Start over. It was a gamble. Ray could call Morgan to verify, could smell the bullshit, could tell Jessica to fuck off. But Jessica was betting on the desperation she saw in his eyes, the hunger for reconciliation with the daughter who'd cut him off. She was betting on the ego of a man who'd left his family and convinced himself it wasn't his fault. She really wants me there? His voice cracked slightly. She does. She's just too proud to say it. Jessica handed him the invitation. It would mean everything to her if you came. Ray took the invitation with shaking hands. I'll be there. Tell her I'll be there. Jessica drove away before her nerve broke, before the guilt could set in, before she could think too hard about what she was doing. This was war. Morgan had fired first. Jessica was just returning fire with nuclear weapons. The financial bomb was last. Jessica drafted an email to Morgan's mother, attached PDFs of the Peninsula Grill receipts showing Jessica's credit card, and included screenshots of texts where Morgan had called her mother's cooking inedible and joked about serving catered food at Thanksgiving instead. She scheduled the email to send Saturday morning at 9 a.m., exactly 6 hours before the wedding. Too late to deal with, but early enough to ruin Morgan's entire morning. By Wednesday, everything was in place. Jessica went back to work, took meetings, smiled at brides, and felt nothing. The old Jessica, the one who would have felt guilty about this level of revenge, was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who understood that the world wasn't fair and good people didn't win just by being good. Thursday night, Morgan called. Jessica almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hey, Morgan said, trying to sound casual and failing. I wanted to check if you're still coming Saturday. You never RSVP'd. I'll be there. Jessica's voice was warm, friendly, completely fake. I wouldn't miss it, thank you. Morgan sounded like she might cry. I know things are fucked up right now, but I miss you. I miss my best friend. Jessica thought about all the ways she was going to destroy Morgan's life in 48 hours. She thought about the dress that wouldn't fit, the father who would show up drunk, the photos that would humiliate her, the mother who would cause a scene, the music that would fail. She thought about Morgan standing at the altar in a too big bridesmaid dress, her perfect day crumbling around her, finally understanding what betrayal felt like. I miss you too, Jessica lied. Everything's going to be perfect on Saturday. I promise. Friday was the rehearsal dinner. Jessica didn't go. She claimed a work emergency with another wedding, but she heard all about it from the group chat. Morgan sent photos looking radiant and happy, Brad looking like a Ken doll in a suit, both families mingling over $8,000 food that Jessica had paid for, and Morgan's mother didn't know about yet. Morgan texted her privately, "Wish you were here. Last dinner before I'm Mrs. Mitchell." Jessica stared at that text for a long time. Mrs. Mitchell, except Morgan would still be fucking Daniel after the wedding. Still lying to Brad, still living a double life while Jessica's life was in ruins. The sympathy she'd been fighting all week evaporated. She texted back, "You're going to have the wedding you deserve. I guarantee it." Saturday morning arrived humid and bright, the kind of perfect June day that wedding planners prayed for. Jessica woke up at 6 a.m., showered, and put on the lavender bridesmaid dress she was supposed to wear. It fit perfectly because of course it did. Morgan had insisted on expensive alterations for all 6 bridesmaids. Wanting everything to look flawless and photos dot at 9 a.m., the email to Morgan's mother sent automatically. Jessica imagined Mrs. Whitmore opening her iPad over morning coffee, seeing the receipts, reading Morgan's cruel texts, and felt a small, dark satisfaction dot at 10 a.m. Jessica's phone exploded with texts. The other bridesmaids were in the group chat, panicking. Morgan's freaking out. Her mom showed up screaming. "What's happening? Someone tell me what's going on." Jessica muted the group chat. She got in her car and drove to Grandview Estate, arriving at 11. The venue was already chaos. A wedding coordinator was arguing with a florist about centerpieces. The caterers were setting up. Brad's groomsmen were drinking beer in the parking lot, already too loud, already too drunk. Jessica walked into the bridal suite like she belonged there. 5 other bridesmaids were clustered around Morgan, who was crying so hard her face was blotchy and red. Mrs. Whitmore was also there, yelling about money and disrespect, and how could Morgan treat her own mother this way. "Everyone out," Jessica said calmly. "Give us a minute." The bridesmaids fled gratefully. Mrs. Whitmore looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Jessica's face made her back down. She left, slamming the door behind her. Morgan looked up at Jessica with ruined makeup and desperate eyes. "My mom hates me. She thinks I'm a spoiled brat. She brought up every shitty thing I've ever done. On my wedding day. Why did she bring all that up?" Jessica asked innocently, sitting down next to Morgan like a friend, like someone who gave a shit. Someone sent her receipts from the rehearsal dinner. "She's furious. I let you pay for it without telling her." And there were screenshots of texts where I was bitching about her cooking. And I don't even remember saying that stuff, but it sounds like me. And now she's threatening to leave before the ceremony. Morgan grabbed Jessica's hand. "Can you talk to her, please? You're the only one who can fix this." Jessica wanted to laugh. Morgan was so convinced that Jessica would save her even now, even after everything. The delusion was almost beautiful. "I'll try," Jessica said. "But first, you need to fix your makeup. You can't get married looking like this." Morgan nodded, standing up and walking to the mirror. That's when she saw the dress. Her dress. Except it wasn't her dress. What the fuck? Morgan pulled the garment bag open fully, staring at the size 8 bridesmaid dress hanging where her Vera 1 should be. "This isn't my dress. Where's my dress?" "What do you mean?" Jessica stood up, feigning concern. "That's what was hanging here when I came in. This is a bridesmaid dress. A fucking bridesmaid dress." Morgan was spiraling now, yanking the dress off the hanger, checking the size tag, her hands shaking. "Someone took my dress. Someone stole my wedding dress." The other bridesmaids rushed back in, drawn by the screaming. Chaos erupted. Everyone had theories the venue coordinator must have moved it. The seamstress must have picked it up for last-minute alterations. Someone must have hung it in the wrong room. Jessica watched it all unfold with calm detachment, occasionally offering helpful suggestions that led nowhere. By noon, Morgan was wearing the bridesmaid dress. It was that or nothing. The ceremony was at 3, not enough time to find a replacement. She tried to order an emergency dress from a boutique in Charleston, but nothing fit right. Nothing looked bridal enough. So she stood in front of the mirror in a lavender dress identical to what her bridesmaids were wearing, crying while a makeup artist tried to salvage her tear-streaked face. "You still look beautiful," Jessica lied, holding Morgan's hand. "Everyone will understand. It's a funny story you'll tell for years." Morgan laughed bitterly. The bride who got married in a bridesmaid dress because someone stole her wedding gown? Hilarious. At 1 p.m., Morgan's phone rang. An unknown number. She answered on speaker because her hands were shaking too hard to hold it properly. "Baby girl?" "It's Dad." Morgan went white. "What?" "I'm outside." "I'm at your wedding. I know we haven't talked in a while, but when your friend said you wanted me here, I couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss walking my little girl down the aisle." The bridesmaids all turned to stare at Morgan. Jessica stayed perfectly still, her face a mask of confusion like everyone else. I don't want you here." Morgan's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't invite you." Silence on the other end. "Then your friend Jessica came to my house. She gave me an invitation. She said you wanted to reconcile." Every eye in the room turned to Jessica. She felt her face arrange itself into shock, hurt, betrayal, all the emotions someone falsely accused would show. "I didn't do that," Jessica said firmly. "Morgan, I swear to God, I didn't do that. Someone's fucking with me." Morgan was shaking now, her voice rising to a scream. "My dress is gone. My mom hates me. And now my deadbeat dad is here because someone lied to him and I don't understand what's happening." Brad appeared in the doorway, having heard the screaming from the groom's suite. "Babe, what's wrong?" "Everything." Morgan threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. "Everything is fucking wrong. This whole day is cursed." Brad tried to calm her down, but Morgan was past reason. She was screaming about her dress, about her father, about her mother, about how nothing was going right. The bridesmaids backed away slowly, looking at each other with wide eyes. This was supposed to be a fairy tale wedding. Instead, it was a disaster. Jessica slipped out during the chaos. She walked to the AV room, unlocked it with the vendor access code she'd memorized months ago, and double-checked that her video files were queued up properly. Everything was perfect. She walked to her car, grabbed the device that would let her control the Spotify account remotely, and put it in her purse. Then she walked back inside like nothing had happened. By 2 p.m., Morgan had calmed down enough to function. Her mother had agreed to stay for the ceremony but wasn't speaking to her. Her father was loitering in the parking lot, confused and hurt, and Brad's dad had to ask him to leave before Brad found out he was there. Morgan's makeup was fixed. Her hair was perfect. She looked beautiful despite the wrong dress, despite the blotchy face, despite the fact that her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "I can do this," Morgan whispered to herself in the mirror. "I can do this. It's just one day. After today, everything will be fine." Jessica stood behind her, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "You're going to have the day you deserve." The ceremony was at 3 p.m. 300 guests filled the garden at Grandview Estate, sitting in white chairs arranged in perfect rows. The altar draped in flowers that cost more than most people's cars. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. Everything looked perfect from a distance. Nobody in the audience knew about the dress drama, the family drama, The chaos that had consumed the morning. Brad stood at the altar in his tuxedo, looking nervous and excited. His groomsmen flanked him. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one, Jessica last, smiling serenely. Then came the processional. The music swelled. Everyone stood. Morgan appeared at the back of the garden, walking alone because her father wasn't welcome and she'd never asked anyone else. She was in the lavender bridesmaid dress, and there was a murmur through the crowd, "That's not a wedding dress. Why is she wearing that? What happened?" But Morgan held her head high. She walked down the aisle like she owned it, like she hadn't spent the morning crying, like everything was fine. Brad's face when he saw her was priceless. Confusion, then concern, then a forced smile. They'd discuss it later. For now, he played along. The ceremony was standard. Traditional vows, exchange of rings, readings from Brad's religious aunt about love and commitment that felt ironic, given Morgan's affair with Daniel. Jessica stood to the side, holding Morgan's bouquet, watching it all unfold. She spotted Daniel in the audience, 10th row, looking miserable. He'd actually come. The audacity. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant said, and Brad did, and everyone applauded, and it was done. Morgan was Mrs. Mitchell. The quartet played the recessional. The couple walked back down the aisle, smiling and waving, and the guests followed them inside to the reception hall. This is where it would get interesting. The reception hall at Grandview Estate was stunning high ceilings, chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden. Tables were set with cream linens and gold chargers, centerpieces dripping with white roses and peonies. A stage was set up for the band. A large screen hung on one wall for the slideshow that would play during dinner. Cocktail hour passed normally. Morgan and Brad took photos with family. Guests drank and ate past appetizers and commented on the beautiful venue. Jessica circulated, playing her role as bridesmaid perfectly, smiling and making small talk and waiting for the right moment. At 6 p.m., everyone took their seats for dinner. Morgan and Brad sat at the head table, flanked by the wedding party. Brad's father stood to give a toast. He talked about how he'd known Brad was special from the day he was born, how proud he was, how lucky Morgan was to marry into their family. The subtext was clear: Brad was the catch here, the prize, and Morgan should be grateful. Morgan's forced smile suggested she understood the subtext. Jessica saw her jaw tighten, saw her grip her champagne glass so hard her knuckles went white. But Morgan didn't say anything. She just sat there and took it, because that's what brides did at their own weddings. Then came the slideshow. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. Soft music started playing, or it was supposed to. Instead, there was silence. The AV tech scrambled to fix it, but nothing worked. Jessica had made sure of that. The slideshow started playing anyway. Photos of Brad and Morgan's relationship, their first date, their engagement, vacations, family gatherings. Sweet photos that made people awe and smile. Normal wedding slideshow stuff. Then the video glitched. It was subtle at first. A frame here, a flash there, images appearing for just a second before disappearing. But the flashes were of something else. Something that looked like it was from Brad's bachelor party. Men doing body shots. Someone vomiting. Brad getting a lap dance from someone who definitely wasn't Morgan. The room went quiet. People leaned forward, trying to see if they'd actually seen what they thought they'd seen. The slideshow continued, more glitches, more flashes of debauchery. Then the audio kicked in, drunk shouting, crude jokes. Brad's voice saying something about last night of freedom from the ball and chain. Morgan stood up so fast her chair fell over. Turn it off. Fucking turn it off. The AV tech was frantically pressing buttons, but nothing worked. The slideshow kept playing, kept glitching, kept showing images that made Brad's family gasp and Morgan's mother shake her head in disgust. Brad was frozen, his face red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, someone pulled the plug on the whole AV system. The screen went black. The lights came up. 300 guests sat in complete silence, staring at the head table. That's not real, Brad stammered. Someone edited that. That's fake. But the damage was done. Whispers started immediately. Brad's mother looked horrified. His father looked furious. Morgan looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Jessica sat perfectly still. Her face arranged in shocked sympathy and felt absolutely nothing. The catering staff brought out dinner, trying to pretend nothing had happened. The band set up to play, but the energy in the room was dead. People ate in near silence, occasionally whispering to their neighbors. Everyone avoiding eye contact with the bride and groom. Morgan excused herself to the bathroom. 3 bridesmaids followed her, including Jessica. In the bathroom, Morgan was having a complete breakdown. Someone is sabotaging me, she sobbed. My dress, my dad showing up, now this. Someone did this on purpose. Someone hates me. The other bridesmaids offered useless platitudes about technical difficulties and bad luck. Jessica stood in the back, watching Morgan cry, and felt the first flicker of something that might have been satisfaction. This was working. Everything was working exactly as planned. Maybe it's karma, Jessica said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something? Morgan's eyes narrowed. What the fuck does that mean? It means maybe you should think about the choices you've made, the people you've hurt. Jessica kept her voice soft, sympathetic, but there was steel underneath. Maybe this is what you deserve. The bathroom went silent. The other bridesmaids looked at each other, confused and uncomfortable. Morgan stared at Jessica like she was seeing her for the first time. You know what? Get out. Morgan's voice was shaking. Get the fuck out. You're not my friend. You never were. Jessica smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. No, Morgan. You were never mine. She walked out of the bathroom, leaving the other bridesmaids to deal with Morgan's meltdown. She could hear the screaming start as she walked away. Morgan finally putting pieces together, finally realizing who had destroyed her perfect day. But it was too late. Morgan was trapped in her own wedding with 300 witnesses, and there was nothing she could do. Jessica walked back to the reception hall. Dinner was wrapping up. People were starting to relax, the awkwardness fading into the buzz of alcohol, and the band starting to warm up. The first dance was next. Morgan and Brad's carefully choreographed moment, set to At Last by Etta James, a classic choice that Morgan had agonized over for months. Jessica pulled out her phone. She opened the Spotify app, now logged into her new account that controlled the reception playlist. She scrolled through her prepared alternatives and selected one. Then she waited. Morgan and Brad emerged from backstage, Morgan's eyes red but her makeup fixed, her smile plastered on. They walked to the center of the dance floor. The band leader announced them. Everyone applauded. The opening notes of At Last began to play, except they didn't. Instead, what came through the speakers was You Oughta Know by Alanis Morissette. The explicit version, the one about being fucked in a theater and going down on someone in a movie theater. The one absolutely no one would choose for a wedding first dance. The band scrambled to stop playing. The AV tech ran for the sound system. But Jessica had routed everything through her phone, and she wasn't changing it. Brad and Morgan stood frozen on the dance floor while Alanis screamed about betrayal and revenge, and 300 guests tried not to laugh. Brad's face was purple. Morgan looked like she might actually kill someone. Finally, mercifully, someone found the main power and killed all sound. The silence that followed was deafening. Technical difficulties, the band leader announced weakly. We'll take a short break. Morgan walked off the dance floor without looking at Brad. She walked straight toward Jessica, who was standing by the bar, calmly sipping champagne. You did this? Morgan's voice was low, dangerous. All of it. My dress, my dad, the video, the music. It was you. Prove it, Jessica said simply. You're a psychopath. I'm a woman who loved two people who betrayed me. You made your choices, Morgan. I'm just making sure you understand what those choices cost. Morgan lunged at her. Actually lunged, hands out like claws, ready to rip Jessica's face off. Two groomsmen caught her, holding her back while she screamed and fought. The entire reception watched as the bride had a complete public breakdown. As she screamed about Jessica ruining everything, as she sobbed that none of this was fair, Brad finally intervened, pulling Morgan away, trying to calm her down. But Morgan was past calm. She was screaming that the wedding was over, that everyone should leave, that she wanted to go home. Brad tried to reason with her, tried to save face. But it was useless. The wedding ended at 7:30 p.m. Guests filed out awkwardly, whispering to each other, already composing the text they'd send to friends about the disaster they'd just witnessed. The most expensive wedding of the Charleston social season had imploded spectacularly, and everyone had seen it. Jessica left without saying goodbye to anyone. She drove home, changed out of her bridesmaid dress, and poured herself a glass of wine. Then she opened her laptop and started scrolling through social media. The wedding was already trending locally. Someone had filmed Morgan's breakdown and posted it to Instagram. Someone else had captured the Alanis Morissette moment. The hashtag Whitmore wedding disaster was gaining traction. By midnight, it had gone viral beyond Charleston. By morning, it would be national news. Jessica watched it all unfold with detached interest. She'd expected the revenge to feel satisfying, cathartic, like finally getting justice after months of pain. Instead, she felt empty, hollow, like she'd carved out the parts of Morgan's life that mattered, and found nothing inside worth taking. She went to bed at 2 a.m. and didn't sleep. She kept thinking about Morgan's face, the genuine confusion and hurt before the anger set in. She kept thinking about Daniel, who she'd spotted leaving the reception early, his face ashen. She kept thinking about Brad, who hadn't done anything wrong except marry a woman who was in love with someone else. The collateral damage was extensive. But Jessica told herself she didn't care. Morgan had destroyed her life first. This was just balancing the scales. Sunday morning, Jessica's phone exploded with messages. Her boss had seen the viral videos and recognized memorable moments, Jessica's work on the wedding. She wanted to know what had happened. The other bridesmaids were in the group chat, debating whether Jessica was responsible. Daniel had called 17 times. Morgan's mother had somehow gotten Jessica's number and left a voicemail calling her a vindictive bitch. Jessica ignored all of it. She made coffee, sat on her couch, and stared at the wall. The apartment felt too quiet. Daniel's things were gone. She'd boxed them up and left them in the lobby of his new building earlier that week, but his absence was everywhere. The empty spot on the bookshelf where his sci-fi novels had been, the second toothbrush holder in the bathroom, the dent in the couch cushion where he always sat. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Jessica Chen? A woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes, this is Amanda Rothstam. I'm an attorney representing Morgan Whitmore Mitchell. My client wishes to inform you that she's pursuing legal action for intentional infliction of emotional distress, property theft, and defamation. You'll be receiving formal notice within the week. Jessica laughed. She couldn't help it. Good luck proving any of that. We have witnesses who heard you make threatening statements. We have evidence of your access to the venue. We have testimony from Morgan's father about your visit. You're not as clever as you think. Tell Morgan she should focus on her marriage, if it lasts that long. Jessica hung up. The lawsuit never materialized. How could it? Morgan would have to admit to the affair in court. She'd have to explain why Jessica might want revenge. She'd have to put all her dirty laundry on public record. So it was an empty threat, a last desperate attempt to hurt Jessica the way Jessica had hurt her. But other consequences came fast. By Monday afternoon, Jessica's boss called her into the office. Memorable Moments had received calls from 3 different clients, asking to switch coordinators because they'd heard Jessica was involved in the Whitmore wedding disaster. The company's reputation was taking a hit. Jessica was being put on administrative leave pending an investigation. I didn't do anything illegal, Jessica said calmly. Morgan's wedding had technical difficulties. That's not my fault. Her boss looked at her sadly. Even if that's true, the optics are terrible. You were Morgan's maid of honor. You had unlimited access to the venue. And now her wedding is a viral catastrophe. Whether you did it or not, people think you did. That's enough. Jessica was fired on Wednesday. Not officially for the sabotage, they couldn't prove that, but for conduct unbecoming of a memorable Moments representative and damage to company reputation. 3 years of perfect work. Dozens of flawless weddings, none of it mattered. She was done. Thursday, Jessica's landlord called. The building was going condo. She had 60 days to either buy her unit at market rate or move out. The timing felt cosmically cruel. No job, no fiancé, and now no apartment. Everything she'd built in Charleston was crumbling. Friday morning, 1 week after the wedding, Jessica's doorbell rang at 6 a.m. She opened it to find Daniel standing there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" He asked. "No." "Please." 5 minutes. Jessica almost said no again, almost slammed the door in his face. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the same self-destructive impulse that had driven her to destroy Morgan's wedding. Instead of just walking away, she let him in. Daniel sat on the couch, in his old spot, and looked around the apartment like he was memorizing it. "I ended things with Morgan. After the wedding, I told her I couldn't do it anymore. Want a medal? I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to take me back. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. Morgan didn't love me. She loved the idea of having options, and I was too stupid and selfish to see it." Jessica sat down across from him, maintaining distance. "Why are you really here, Daniel?" "Because you scared me." He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw real fear there. "What you did to Morgan's wedding, I've been piecing it together all week, and Jess, that was fucking terrifying. The planning, the execution, the way you destroyed her and made it look like bad luck. That's not the woman I knew. The woman you knew was a fucking idiot who trusted people who didn't deserve it. The woman I knew was kind and soft and believed the best in people. What happened to her? You happened to her." Jessica's voice was flat. "You and Morgan. You took that woman and you broke her into pieces, and what crawled out of the wreckage isn't kind anymore. So congratulations. You created this." Daniel flinched. I know I did. But Jess, you need help. What you did wasn't justice. It was just cruel. Morgan's marriage is falling apart. Brad's family is threatening to sue her for fraud because she signed a prenup claiming fidelity. Her mother isn't speaking to her. She lost her job because the viral videos made her a liability. You didn't just ruin her wedding. You ruined her entire life. Good. Jessica felt nothing saying it. Just cold, hard satisfaction. She ruined mine. Now we're even. Are you even? Daniel leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, you look just as destroyed as she does. You lost your job. You're losing your apartment. You're sitting here alone drinking wine at 6 in the morning. How's this winning? Jessica looked down and realized she was indeed holding a glass of wine. She didn't remember pouring it. She'd been drinking more lately, she knew that, but it had always been evening drinking, social drinking, normal drinking. When had it become morning drinking? When had it become this? Get out, she said quietly. Jess, get the fuck out of my apartment, Daniel. You don't get to come here and psychoanalyze me. You don't get to pretend you care about my well-being. You cheated on me with my best friend. You destroyed everything we built. And now you're worried I'm too mean? Fuck you both. Daniel left. Jessica locked the door behind him and sat down with her wine and tried to remember when she'd become this person. When had revenge stopped being about justice and become about destruction? When had she stopped caring about collateral damage? The viral videos had hit Brad harder than anyone anticipated. He'd been humiliated in front of his entire social circle, his family, his colleagues. The bachelor party footage, even though Jessica had manipulated it to look worse than it was, had destroyed his reputation. His law firm had asked him to take a leave of absence. His parents were furious, and Morgan, instead of supporting him, had been too busy dealing with her own fallout to care. Their marriage lasted 6 weeks. Brad filed for divorce in late July. Citing irreconcilable differences and fraud, Morgan had signed a prenup promising fidelity, and he had evidence of her affair with Daniel. The divorce would be nasty and public and expensive. Morgan would lose almost everything. Jessica heard all of this through the Charleston rumor mill, through former coworkers who still texted her, through social media stalking she knew was unhealthy but couldn't stop. She watched Morgan's life disintegrate in real time and told herself it was what Morgan deserved. But at night, alone in her apartment, Jessica couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the wedding, kept seeing Morgan's face when she realized her dress was gone, kept hearing her scream during the breakdown. The satisfaction had curdled into something uglier, something that tasted like regret, but felt too late to matter. August came. Jessica's unemployment was running out. She'd applied to every event planning company in Charleston, but her reputation preceded her. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who had allegedly sabotaged the Whitmore wedding. Never mind that they couldn't prove it. In this industry, perception was reality. She started applying to jobs outside Charleston. Atlanta, Charlotte, even cities she'd never considered. Anything to escape. But the viral videos followed her. Potential employers would Google her name and find hundreds of articles about the wedding disaster. Even if they believed she wasn't responsible, the association was enough to make her unhireable. By September, Jessica was broke. Actually broke. Living on credit cards and the last of her savings. Her landlord had given her an extension on the condo deadline. More out of pity than kindness, but it wouldn't last. She needed to leave Charleston, needed to start over somewhere nobody knew her name. She called her parents in California. She hadn't spoken to them since the engagement ended. They'd been furious at Daniel, had wanted to fly out and confront him, and Jessica had pushed them away because she couldn't handle their concern. Now she needed help, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Come home, her mother said immediately. Stay with us. Figure things out. I'm 28 years old. I can't move back in with my parents. You can and you will. We have the guest house. You can stay there, get back on your feet, and nobody has to know you're struggling. Jessica wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine, but she wasn't fine. She was drowning. So she said yes. She packed everything she owned into a U-Haul trailer, forwarded her mail to her parents' address in San Diego, and left Charleston on a Tuesday in late September. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. didn't have anyone to say goodbye to. All her friendships had been through Morgan or work, and both of those worlds had evaporated. The drive across the country took 5 days. Jessica drove 12 hours a day, stayed in cheap motels, ate fast food, and tried not to think about how completely her life had fallen apart. At night, in anonymous hotel rooms, she scrolled through social media and watched other people's lives continue. While hers had stopped, Morgan's divorce was finalized in October. She got almost nothing. The prenup had been ironclad, and Brad's lawyers had shredded her in court. She'd moved back in with her mother, posting occasional Instagram photos that tried to look upbeat but couldn't hide the hollowness in her eyes. She'd gained weight. Her hair looked dull. The comments on her posts were mostly supportive, but there were always a few people who referenced the wedding, who called her a cheater, who said she got what she deserved. Jessica looked at those photos and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just emptiness. Morgan's suffering hadn't healed Jessica's pain. It had just created more pain, spread it around like a virus, infected everyone it touched. Daniel had moved to Atlanta. Jessica only knew because his LinkedIn said so. He'd gotten a job at a startup, was apparently doing well, had probably moved on with his life. Maybe he'd learned something from the disaster. Maybe he was a better person now. Jessica would never know. San Diego was beautiful and warm and felt like a foreign country. Jessica's parents were kind but worried. They could see the damage, the way Jessica flinched at loud noises, the way she drank too much wine at dinner, the way she spent hours staring at nothing. They suggested therapy. Jessica went to 2 sessions and quit. The therapist wanted to talk about forgiveness, about healing, about moving forward. Jessica wasn't ready for any of that. She got a job at a bakery. Minimum wage, early mornings, nothing remotely related to event planning. Her coworkers were mostly college kids and retirees supplementing their income. Nobody knew her history. Nobody had seen the viral videos. She could be anonymous here, invisible, just another person working a dead-end job. Months passed. Jessica existed but didn't live. She went to work, came home, helped her parents with dinner, watched TV, went to bed, repeat. She'd become a ghost haunting her own life. December arrived. 1 full year since Daniel's confession, since everything fell apart. Jessica's mother asked if she wanted to come to the family Christmas party. Jessica said no. She couldn't handle the questions from relatives, the concerned looks, the whispered conversations about poor Jessica and what happened. On Christmas Eve, alone in the guest house while her parents entertained family, Jessica got drunk. Really drunk. She pulled out her laptop and, for the first time in months, looked up Morgan. Morgan's Instagram was still active, but barely. Her last post was from 3 weeks ago, a selfie with forced smile, caption about new beginnings. The comments were sparse. Most of her friends had quietly unfollowed after the divorce. She'd been erased from Charleston society, exiled from the world she'd worked so hard to infiltrate through Brad. Jessica opened a new tab and started typing. An email to Morgan. No subject line. Just words spilling out, unfiltered by sobriety or common sense. I destroyed your wedding and I'm not sorry. You destroyed my life first. You fucked my fiancé and didn't care who got hurt. You expected me to stand there and smile while you married someone else, while you kept Daniel as your backup plan. You treated me like I was disposable. So I made sure you understood what that felt like. I made sure your perfect day became the worst day of your life. And watching you suffer should have made me feel better, but it didn't. It just made me hollow. We both lost everything. There are no winners here. Just 2 women who destroyed each other because we couldn't figure out how to be honest. I hope you're doing better than I am. I hope at least one of us figures out how to be happy again. But I don't think that person is me. Jessica's finger hovered over send. She was drunk enough to do it, drunk enough not to care about consequences. But something stopped her. Maybe the last shred of self-preservation. Maybe the realization that Morgan didn't need this email, didn't need Jessica's confession or her pain. They'd inflicted enough damage on each other. She deleted the email, closed the laptop, sat in the dark guest house and cried for the first time since the wedding. Really cried. Not angry tears or bitter tears, but grief. Mourning everything she'd lost: Daniel, Morgan, her career, her home. The version of herself who'd believed in happy endings. The crying didn't help. But it felt like something. After months of feeling nothing, even pain was progress. New Year's came. Jessica made no resolutions. What was the point? She'd spent a year proving that revenge didn't fix anything, that cruelty only multiplied, that you couldn't hurt someone else into healing yourself. She'd learned the lessons. She just didn't know what to do with them. January brought unexpected news. Jessica's former boss from Memorable Moments called. Jessica almost didn't answer. What could she possibly want? But curiosity won. "I'm calling to apologize," her boss said. "And to tell you that you were right." Right about what? About Morgan Whitmore. After you left, I did some digging. I talked to vendors, other coordinators, people who'd worked with her. Turns out you weren't the first person she'd screwed over. She'd been stealing ideas from other brides, not paying vendors, blaming coordinators when things went wrong. She had a reputation for being difficult and dishonest. If I'd known that before I put you on her wedding, I never would have done it. Jessica didn't know what to say. The vindication felt hollow, arriving too late to matter. "I can't undo firing you," her boss continued. "But I can give you a reference. A good one. If you ever want to get back into event planning, I'll vouch for your work. What happened at that wedding wasn't your fault." Except it was. It absolutely was. But Jessica just said thank you and hung up. She thought about the reference. Thought about whether she could ever go back to wedding planning, to making other people's happy endings while her own life was in ruins. The answer felt like no. That version of Jessica, the one who believed in love and romance and fairy tales, was dead. She'd killed her along with Morgan's wedding. February. Jessica got a letter forwarded from her old Charleston address. No return address, just neat handwriting on the envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single page. Morgan's handwriting. "Jessica, I'm writing this letter knowing you'll probably throw it away without reading it, but I need to say it anyway. You were right to hate me. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I spent months trying to justify it, trying to pretend I was the victim of circumstances instead of the architect of my own choices. The wedding disaster, my divorce, losing everything, I told myself it was all your fault. That you were cruel and vindictive and destroyed my life out of spite. But the truth is, I destroyed my own life. I made the choices that led to that disaster. I cheated on Brad. I lied to you. I hurt Daniel. I created the circumstances that made you want revenge. And your revenge was devastating and thorough and everything I deserved. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you. I understand why you did what you did. And I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry for everything. I hope you're doing better than I am. I hope you found a way to be happy again. Because I haven't. I don't know if I ever will. But at least I'm honest now. At least I'm not lying anymore. That's something. Morgan. Jessica read the letter 3 times. Then she put it in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But Morgan's words stayed with her. I hope you found a way to be happy again. Because I haven't. I don't know if I ever will. They'd both lost. That was the truth Jessica had been avoiding for months. She destroyed Morgan, but she destroyed herself in the process. The revenge had been so satisfying in planning, so empty in execution. She'd learned the oldest lesson in the book: when you seek revenge, dig two graves. Marge brought the first real turning point. Jessica's parents staged an intervention. Gentle, loving, but firm. She was depressed. She was drinking too much. She was wasting her life in the guest house, hiding from the world. They wanted her to get real help, not 2 therapy sessions and quitting, but actual sustained treatment. "I'm fine," Jessica protested weakly. "You're not fine, sweetie." Her mother's voice was gentle but unyielding. "You've been punishing yourself for a year. Whatever happened in Charleston, whatever you did or didn't do, you need to forgive yourself and move on. I can't. You can. You just have to choose to." Jessica started therapy again in April, a different therapist, one who didn't push forgiveness but focused on understanding. Understanding why Jessica had needed revenge so badly. Understanding what she'd really been trying to fix by destroying Morgan's wedding. Understanding that hurt people, and the cycle only stops when someone chooses to break it. It was hard work. Harder than Jessica expected, facing her own cruelty, her own capacity for calculated destruction, the part of herself that had enjoyed Morgan's suffering. It was easier to blame Morgan, to justify everything as righteous revenge, admitting that she'd become someone she didn't recognize, someone capable of methodical cruelty that required actual courage. By summer, Jessica was doing marginally better. Not good, but better. She'd stopped drinking every night. She'd started taking walks, exercising, doing things that didn't involve numbing herself. She'd applied to a few event planning jobs in San Diego, not weddings, but corporate events, charity galas, things that didn't involve romance. One company called her for an interview. They'd seen the viral videos Impossible not to, but they'd also called her old boss. Gotten the reference, heard the truth about Morgan. They were willing to give her a chance. Jessica took the job. Started in September, 2 full years after everything fell apart. The work was different from weddings, less emotional, more logistical, but it felt right. She was good at it, and nobody expected her to believe in happy endings. Life continued. Jessica made friends with coworkers, started dating casually, nothing serious. Moved out of her parents' guest house into a small apartment in North Park, built a new life piece by piece. Brick by brick, trying not to look back at the rubble she left in Charleston. She thought about Morgan sometimes, wondered if she was okay, if she'd rebuilt too, if they'd both learned anything from the mutual destruction. But she never reached out. What would she say? "Sorry I destroyed your wedding. Sorry we destroyed each other." Some things were better left in the past. 3 years after the wedding disaster, Jessica got a message on LinkedIn from Morgan. "Hey, I know this is weird. I know we haven't talked since everything happened, but I'm in San Diego for work and I saw your profile. Would you want to get coffee? No pressure. I'd understand if you said no, but I'd like to see you. If you're willing." Jessica stared at the message for 3 days before responding. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let sleeping dogs lie, to maintain the distance that had allowed both of them to heal. But another part was curious. What would Morgan say? Who had she become in the years since the disaster? Jessica agreed to coffee. They met at a cafe in Little Italy on a Saturday afternoon. Jessica arrived early, nervous in a way she hadn't expected. When Morgan walked in, Jessica almost didn't recognize her. Morgan had cut her hair short, dyed it darker. She'd lost the polished perfection that used to define her. She looked older, wearier, but somehow more real. They ordered coffee and sat outside. both of them awkward, neither knowing how to start. "You look good," Morgan finally said. "Different, but good. So do you." It wasn't entirely true, but it felt like the right thing to say. "I'm not going to pretend this isn't weird as fuck," Morgan continued. "I wasn't sure you'd even respond to my message, but I've been working on myself, doing therapy, trying to figure out why I made the choices I made. And part of that is making amends to people I hurt. Is this a 12-step thing?" "Sort of. I'm not an A, but I've been working through similar steps. Acknowledging harm, taking responsibility, making things right where possible." Morgan paused. "I know I can't make things right with you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I wanted to say in person that I'm sorry. For everything. For Daniel, for expecting you to smile through my wedding, for every lie I told. You deserved better. You deserved a real friend." Jessica sipped her coffee, buying time to process. "I'm sorry too." Morgan looked surprised. "For what?" "For destroying your wedding. For being so methodical about it. For enjoying your suffering. I was hurt and angry, and I wanted you to hurt the way I hurt. But that didn't fix anything. It just created more damage." "You weren't wrong to want revenge," Morgan said quietly. "What I did was cruel, and I kept being cruel, expecting you to just take it. The wedding disaster was horrible, but it was also the wake-up call I needed. It forced me to look at who I'd become. Someone selfish and dishonest and willing to hurt people to get what I wanted." They sat in silence for a moment. Two women who destroyed each other and were trying to figure out if there was anything worth salvaging. "What happened with Daniel?" Jessica asked. The question had haunted her for years. "We dated for about 6 months after my divorce. It was a disaster. Turned out we didn't actually like each other that much. We just liked the forbidden aspect, the sneaking around. When it was out in the open, there was nothing there. He moved to Atlanta. I haven't talked to him in over a year. Do you ever regret it? Leaving Brad for him?" Morgan laughed bitterly. "Every day. Brad wasn't perfect, but he was good to me. And I threw that away for an affair that meant nothing. The divorce destroyed me financially. My family barely speaks to me. I had to move back to South Carolina, start over from scratch. I work in marketing now for a nonprofit. It's fine. It's not the life I planned, but it's honest work. I lost everything too," Jessica admitted. "My job, my apartment, my whole life in Charleston. I moved back in with my parents for a year. Worked at a bakery. Hit rock bottom pretty hard. I'm doing better now, but it took a long time." "We both lost," Morgan said. "There were no winners." "No," Jessica agreed. "There weren't." They finished their coffee talking about safer things, their current jobs, San Diego, the weather. It was strange and awkward, but not entirely uncomfortable. When they parted ways, they hugged briefly, two people who'd once been close and were now friendly strangers. "I don't know if we can be friends again," Morgan said. "I don't know if that's possible after everything." "Probably not," Jessica agreed. "But maybe this is enough. Maybe acknowledging what happened and moving on is all we can do." Morgan nodded. "Take care of yourself, Jess. You too." Jessica watched Morgan walk away and felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly. Not reconciliation. But maybe acceptance. Maybe the understanding that they'd both been broken people who'd broken each other. And the only way forward was to stop carrying the weight of it. She went home to her apartment, made dinner, and didn't think about the wedding. Didn't replay the revenge in her mind. For the first time in 3 years, the satisfaction of Morgan's suffering wasn't something she needed anymore. Life moved on. Jessica got promoted at work, started dating someone seriously, A graphic designer named Marcus who made her laugh and didn't have any secret affairs with her best friends. She wasn't sure if it would last. She wasn't sure about anything anymore, but it was nice. It was real. 4 years after the wedding disaster, Jessica got an invitation in the mail. Her old boss from Memorable Moments was retiring and throwing a party in Charleston. Former employees were invited. Jessica hadn't been back to Charleston since she'd left. The thought made her stomach tight with anxiety, but she decided to go. Marcus came with her. They flew in on a Friday, stayed at a hotel in the historic district, and went to the party on Saturday night. Jessica saw familiar faces, coworkers she'd liked, vendors she'd worked with. Everyone was kind, if a bit awkward, about her sudden departure years ago. Toward the end of the night, her former boss pulled her aside. "I'm glad you came. And I'm glad you're doing well. You were one of my best coordinators. I'm sorry everything ended the way it did." "Me too," Jessica said honestly. "But I'm in a better place now." "Have you seen Morgan since the wedding?" "Once. We had coffee in San Diego. It was civil." "Strange, but civil." Her boss nodded. "She reached out to me a few months ago. Apologized for how she treated the vendors during her wedding planning. Said she was making amends. I thought it was performative at first, but she seemed genuine." "People can change," Jessica said, "if they want to badly enough." That night, lying in the hotel bed with Marcus asleep beside her, Jessica thought about the person she'd been 4 years ago. Hurt and angry and convinced that revenge would heal her. She thought about Morgan's wedding, the chaos she'd orchestrated, the satisfaction that had turned to ash. She thought about all the time she'd spent hating Morgan and Daniel, time she'd never get back. She didn't regret the revenge exactly. It had felt necessary at the time, the only way to balance the scales. But she understood now that the scales were never balanced. You couldn't hurt someone into healing. You couldn't destroy someone else's life and get your own back. Revenge was just pain multiplied, spread around until everyone was infected. Jessica had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. By becoming someone she barely recognized. By losing everything to prove a point that didn't matter. By spending years rebuilding a life that could never be what it was before, but she'd survived. And maybe that was enough. Maybe survival was its own kind of victory. Sunday morning, Jessica and Marcus walked around Charleston before their flight home. They went to the waterfront, ate Sunday morning. Jessica and Marcus walked around Charleston before their flight home. They went to the waterfront, ate brunch at a cafe overlooking the harbor, and talked about nothing important. It felt normal, peaceful, like Charleston was just another city, not the graveyard of her old life. They were walking back to their hotel when Jessica saw her. Morgan was coming out of a coffee shop on King Street, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her short hair tucked behind her ears. She looked tired but clean, sober, like someone who'd spent years putting themselves back together one piece at a time. Their eyes met across the sidewalk. For a moment, neither moved. Then Morgan crossed the street. "Jessica." Her voice was steady. "I didn't know you were in town." "Retirement party. For my old boss." Jessica gestured to Marcus. "This is Marcus." "Marcus, this is Morgan. We used to be friends." The understatement of the century. Marcus, bless him, just smiled politely and shook Morgan's hand. "Can we talk?" Morgan asked. "Just for a minute." Jessica looked at Marcus, who nodded and said he'd wait at the hotel. Then she followed Morgan to a bench near the waterfront, both of them sitting with careful distance between them. "I'm getting married again," Morgan said abruptly. "Next month. Small ceremony, just family. His name is Tom. He's a teacher. Makes decent money, but nothing like Brad. He knows everything about the affair, the wedding disaster, all of it. And he loves me anyway." "That's good," Jessica said and meant it. I'm glad you found someone. I almost didn't invite my mother. After everything that happened, after I found out you'd sent her those receipts and texts, we didn't speak for almost a year, but we worked through it. She's walking me down the aisle. Morgan paused. I know what you did. All of it. The dress, my dad showing up, the video, the music. I figured it out months after the wedding. But by then, I was so destroyed I couldn't even be angry anymore. Jessica waited for the accusation. The anger, the threat of legal action that had never materialized 4 years ago. Instead, Morgan just looked at her with something that might have been understanding. I deserved it, Morgan continued. Maybe not that exact revenge, maybe not that level of public humiliation, but I deserved consequences. What I did to you was unforgivable, and you made sure I never forgot it. I'm not proud of what I did, Jessica said quietly. I thought destroying your wedding would make me feel better. It didn't. It just made me into someone I didn't recognize. We both became people we didn't recognize. Morgan stared out at the water. I was so focused on having everything, Brad's money, Daniel's attention, your friendship, that I didn't realize I was destroying all of it. You were just the one who made sure the destruction happened on my timeline instead of later. They sat in silence for a moment. Two women who'd annihilated each other and somehow survived. I have something for you, Morgan said, pulling an envelope from her purse. I've been carrying it around for months, hoping I'd run into you. It's a check. $8,000. For the rehearsal dinner you paid for. I should have paid you back years ago. Jessica took the envelope, feeling the weight of it. You don't have to, I do. I took advantage of your friendship in every possible way. This is me paying back at least one debt. Morgan stood up. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to be friends again. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. Trying to be honest. Trying to be someone worthy of the second chance Tom is giving me. Jessica stood too, holding the envelope. I hope your wedding is beautiful. I mean that, thank you. Morgan hesitated, then said, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. And I hope you're happy, Jess. Really happy. Not just surviving, but actually living. Morgan walked away, disappearing into the Charleston crowds. Just another person with a complicated past trying to build a better future. Jessica opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $8,000, Morgan's signature neat and careful at the bottom. And underneath it, a small card with just 4 words, we both deserve better. Jessica stood there on the waterfront, holding the check, and felt the last piece of anger dissolve. Morgan was right. They both deserved better friends, better choices, better versions of themselves. They had destroyed each other trying to get revenge for hurts that could never be undone. And in the end, they'd both lost everything and had to rebuild from nothing. But they'd rebuilt. That was something. Jessica walked back to the hotel, found Marcus waiting in the lobby, and kissed him hello. She told him about the encounter, about the check, about Morgan's upcoming wedding. He listened without judgment, holding her hand, being present in the way that good partners are. On the flight home, Jessica stared out the window at the clouds and thought about revenge, about how satisfying it had been to plan, how empty it had been to execute, how much damage it had caused. She thought about the viral videos that had destroyed Morgan's reputation, the divorce that had bankrupted her, the years of rebuilding they'd both endured. The revenge had worked. It had hurt Morgan exactly as deeply as Jessica had wanted, but it hadn't healed anything. It had just created more wounds, more scar tissue, more people who needed to spend years in therapy learning how to be human again. Jessica pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. She started writing, something she'd been thinking about for months, but hadn't had the courage to do. To anyone who thinks revenge will fix what someone broke, it won't. It will feel necessary. It will feel justified. It will feel like the only way to balance the scales. But revenge doesn't balance anything. It just tips the scales in the other direction until everyone is buried under the weight. I destroyed someone who destroyed me, and in the process, I destroyed myself. We both lost years of our lives to mutual annihilation. We both became people we hated. And for what? So it could prove a point? So she could learn a lesson? The only lesson either of us learned is that hurt people, and the cycle only stops when someone chooses to break it. I didn't break the cycle. I fed it. I made it worse. And I'm still paying for that choice 4 years later. If someone betrays you, hurt you, breaks your heart, you have every right to be angry. Every right to cut them out of your life. Every right to protect yourself. But revenge? Calculated, methodical, destructive revenge? That doesn't make you whole again. It just makes you hollow. Choose better than I did. Jessica saved the note. She didn't know if she'd ever post it anywhere, ever share it with anyone. But writing it felt important. Acknowledging the truth felt important. When they landed in San Diego, Marcus carried their bags to the car while Jessica checked her phone. There was a text from an unknown number. Thank you for not making a scene when we ran into each other. I know you could have. I know you had every right to. Thank you for choosing kindness instead. With Jessica typed a response, thank you for the check. And congratulations on your wedding. I mean it. Be happy. She sent it and felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not friendship. But maybe peace. Maybe the understanding that they'd both been broken people who'd broken each other. And the only way forward was to stop carrying the weight of it. That night, Jessica and Marcus made dinner together in her apartment. They talked about his latest design project, about her upcoming corporate event, about normal things that normal people talked about. And Jessica realized she was happy. Not perfectly happy, not without scars, but genuinely content with the life she'd built from the rubble. The revenge hadn't given her that. Time had, therapy had. Choosing to rebuild instead of staying stuck in the anger had. She thought about Morgan getting married next month, walking down the aisle in whatever dress she chose, marrying a man who knew all her worst mistakes and loved her anyway. She thought about Brad, who'd probably moved on and found someone honest. She thought about Daniel in Atlanta, hopefully learning to be a better person, and she thought about herself. 4 years older, infinitely wiser, finally understanding that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was surviving. It was healing. It was building a life so good that the people who'd hurt you became irrelevant to your happiness. Jessica had gotten her revenge at Morgan's wedding. She'd destroyed everything Morgan cared about and made her suffer in the most public way possible. And it had cost Jessica everything too, her job, her home, her sense of self. Years of her life spent rebuilding, but she'd survived. They'd both survived. And maybe, eventually, they'd both be happy. That was the real ending. Not the wedding disaster. Not the viral videos. Not the mutual destruction. The real ending was 2 broken women who'd hurt each other terribly, learned hard lessons, and somehow found their way back to being human again. Jessica finished dinner, cleaned up the kitchen, and went to bed next to Marcus, feeling lighter than she had in years. The past was still there. The scars didn't disappear, but it didn't own her anymore. She'd gotten her revenge. And then she'd gotten her life back. In the end, the second part mattered more than the first. 6 months later, Jessica got a wedding announcement in the mail. Morgan and Tom married in a small ceremony in Columbia, South Carolina. No return address, just the announcement and a photo of Morgan in a simple white dress, genuinely smiling, looking happier than Jessica had ever seen her. Jessica put it on her fridge with a magnet, not as a trophy, not as a reminder of revenge, but as proof that people could change, could rebuild, could find happiness even after destroying everything. Marcus saw it one morning and asked if it bothered her. No, Jessica said honestly. I hope she's happy. I hope they both are. Both? Her and me. I hope we both figured out how to be happy after everything. Marcus kissed her forehead. I think you did. Jessica looked at the wedding photo and thought about the question that had haunted her for years. Was the revenge worth it? The answer was complicated. The revenge had felt necessary at the time. It had destroyed Morgan's perfect day and made her suffer. It had provided a moment of dark satisfaction. But it had also destroyed Jessica, cost her everything, and left both women broken. Was it worth it? Maybe, maybe not. The question didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they'd both survived it. They'd both rebuilt. They'd both learned that revenge doesn't fix anything. It just creates new problems that take years to solve. Jessica took down the wedding announcement and put it in the drawer. She didn't need to display it. She didn't need the reminder anymore. She was happy. Finally, genuinely, deeply happy. And that was the best revenge of all, not Morgan's suffering, but Jessica's own heart-won peace. The wedding video had gone viral on a Tuesday 4 years ago, and it had destroyed everything. But Jessica had built something new from the ashes. Something real. Something that belonged to her and not to the anger. That was how the story ended. Not with revenge, but with survival. Not with destruction, but with rebuilding. It was a better ending than the one she'd planned at Morgan's wedding. It just took 4 years to get there. The end.